will just do a quick introduction on myself. I'm the least important person on this call. I'm simply the moderator. My name is John Robinson. I'm a partner at a company called Mazarine Ventures. We are technology investors entirely focused on innovations that relate to water and wastewater. You can't get far in water without touching water quality, and you can't get far in water quality without touching on data. And so a big part of Mazarine's focus is on that intersection of water quality and data. And once you get deeper and deeper into water quality data, you start to look around you at your own tap, the river behind your house, and you think, what is the water quality that I'm in direct exposure to? And you go online and look, and it's really hard to find accurate water quality data. But what's easy to find is news about water quality problems. And our featured panelists today, before we jump down to this call, and I'm just killing time here, everybody, waiting for more people to join. We were all just doing quick Google searches on water quality problems in the Great Lakes region, and guess what? There's tons. So the topic of today's discussion is not, is there compromised water quality in the Great Lakes region? It's, what are we going to do about it? And the genesis of this discussion was, part of the solution is policy. Part of the solution is technology. Part of the solution is people, which means citizens, which means citizen science. So for the next 55 minutes, we're going to really get into the weeds on what do we do about this water quality problem in abundance. I mean, there's tons of water in the Great Lakes, but if it's compromised, what's the point? So now that everyone's seemingly joined, again, John Robinson from Mazarine Ventures, we're the hosts of today's discussion. Our co-host is the Great Lakes Observation System. Tim Kearns, do you want to provide a quick overview on yourself and GLOS?
Yeah, sure. Well, welcome everyone. It's great to have you as part of this discussion today. My name is Tim Kearns, and I'm with the Great Lakes Observing System, as John said, and we're very pleased and honored to be a co-host of this discussion. If you're not that familiar with the Great Lakes Observing System, we are a nonprofit, we're registered nonprofit in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we've been around for over a dozen years or so, and we have a mandate really to publish publicly available information about the Great Lakes. We're part of the IUS, the Integrated Ocean Observing System program in the United States. We're also associated with many Canadian entities, both at the provincial and national level in Canada. So we serve as sort of a de facto binational organization to help organizations, universities, researchers, and citizen scientists get their data and make it publicly available to everyone. And I'll probably have an opportunity part of this discussion to talk about some of the technology that we're building right now to help support that. Just a little background on myself. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario in the Great Lakes. I'm very passionate about water. I've spent my whole life around water and built my career around water. I live close to an ocean, which isn't the Great Lakes, but that's okay. And I've got a background in ocean mapping and software development. So I joined GLOS a couple of years ago, and happy to be a part of the organization and move all this forward. So thanks, John, for inviting us and letting us be a co-host today.
No, thanks, Tim. And thanks for all the good work that GLOS is doing. It's really a phenomenal organization that has great vision and mission. And we're fortunate to be able to be partners with GLOS. I'm just going to go around the gallery here of videos. Megan, do you want to do a quick introduction, please?
Sure. Wonderful to be with you all today. My name is Megan Glover. I am co-founder and CEO of 120 Water. 120 Water, we're a digital water platform of cloud-based software, tech-enabled kits and services that both regulators, water utilities, and municipalities use to manage their water quality programs. So solutions for anything from infrastructure programs, lead reduction programs in the distribution system, all the way to compliance-driven programs, lead in schools, and LCR compliance. So I have a lot of in the trenches experience helping utilities set up these first-time programs. A lot of them are first-time programs, and excited to share some of those today. And a little bit of personal background: born and raised Hoosier, Northern Indiana, so Lake Michigan, near and dear to my family's history. And we are based in Indianapolis, Indiana, 120 Water. So pleasure to be with you all today.
And thanks for being with us, Megan. Johnny, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is John Pujol. I'm the CEO of Simple Lab. We're a water testing kit and data company. We operate a network of more than 100 certified water testing labs across the country and bring their instrumentation and technology online to serve predominantly consumers and business who are doing water testing and running water testing programs and want to run those programs at a low cost and in such a way that people who are doing water testing get reliable, affordable answers to their water quality questions, along with reports that explain everything that's in their water and what they can do next to make it better.
Interesting. Thanks, Johnny. And where are you based?
Based in Berkeley, California.
Got it. Megan, north of Indianapolis. Tim Kearns, Vancouver?
Victoria.
Victoria, got it, nearby. Dal, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dal Levant. I am the founder and CEO of Aquagenuity, where water meets ingenuity. We are the Google search for water quality. We make it easy for consumers to understand what's in their water, eventually in real time, but from any smart device and apps that consumers already use every day. We are a SoftBank portfolio company. We have additional backing and funding from Google and Amazon. They're really excited about our mission to bring all of this great data that you guys are helping to collect, bring it forward to consumers and kind of bridge that gap. You know, water is that shared resource between consumers, corporations, and cities, and that golden triangle. So we want to bring transparency, hashtag data to the people, and make it really easy for the average consumer to understand what's in their water in real time, even if they don't have a degree in chemistry or environmental engineering. We also want to cross and bridge that gap for folks who maybe can't afford kind of test kits and things like that by making what we call the future of water, real-time water quality monitoring or water quality forecasts possible for a geographic area. And obviously that's a huge data initiative. So we lean on partnerships like the one we have with Johnny over there at Simple Lab. And we love the work that folks are doing at 120 and some of the nonprofits. We're technology agnostic, so we pull all that data in and just make it really easy for the average consumer to access. So that's what we do at Aquagenuity.
I love it. Thanks, Dal. And you're based in Atlanta, right?
We are based in Atlanta. We also have a team and an office in Seattle, Washington.
Got it. Last but certainly not least, Tim.
Thanks, John. Good to meet you all as well. So I'm Tim Mail. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Policy Innovation Center. And the mission of our group is really to make impatience into a virtue. We focus on policy ideas that will make progress, whatever the issue is, progress happen a lot faster. So that's what we focus on is the speed of action and how you can use regulations, policy, language, better, more run bureaucracies to make things go faster. We have a major program in water infrastructure, but the specific thing that I'll mention now is we're running a competition through December 1st to get anyone, students, tech companies, utilities, nonprofits, to submit ideas on how utility water reports could look dramatically different in terms of reaching a consumer. And that competition is at www.waterdataprize.com. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So those are our featured participants. And so the next 45 minutes is really a repartee discussion. There really isn't an agenda, which makes this somehow refreshing for everybody out there to just follow our conversation. You're kind of eavesdropping in on our discussion here. And so the next sort of few minutes, thank you for your introductions, everyone. But in layman's terms, break it down for us. What does your organization or company really do? Who are you creating benefit for? I'm going to come back to you, Megan. Like, who's your company? Who pays you for this service? In lay terms, what value are you creating?
Yeah, I think we've all maybe heard bad data in, bad data out, and historically, government agencies and water systems are not great stewards of data. And so, in layman's terms, what do? We help them manage their data better so that they can execute programs that actually communicate information back to regulators and end users. And why do they use 120 to do that is because how they're doing it right now is on spreadsheets and paper. And as we all know, if we don't have data in a format that it's useful, then we can't expect to communicate better, or we can't expect to do, public transparency dashboards or initiative if the data is not in a format to do that. So, in layman's terms, we help them manage the data better so they have more clarity on how to do their job and how to communicate that information out.
And
So
the they in that is municipalities.
Municipalities and state regulators. So we work with 16 states, including 4 statewide drinking water administrations, and then about 50 municipalities across those states. So,
And
yes.
Megan, would 120 Water have been a viable business 15 or 20 years ago? What's changed? Why are you viable now? And 20 years ago, why wouldn't, well, you were probably still in university 15, 20 years ago, but what's changed that makes this a workable business now for you?
I think a few things. One, we have increased regulation and aging infrastructure as 2 critical factors that are increasing the demand for our business. It's just, quite frankly, policy is changing the expectations of our customer base, and they need better data management and transparency tools to check that box for new regulation. I think the other thing 20 years ago is new modern tools exist now to actually consume and communicate data better. Between every device is connected, whether I'm a consumer with a smartphone or a sensor in the ground. And I think the demographics of the consumer is changing and expecting and kind of forcing the utility at some point to modernize their systems so that they can communicate more effectively to them. So I think a couple of things. It's that industrial 4.0 or digital transformation, whatever bucket you want to put that in, is enabling the technology companies like 120, but then also it's the policy and the regulations that are actually forcing the spend to actually do it, at least what we're seeing.
Okay, thanks for that elaboration. Tim Mail, I want to come back to you because there's 2 Tims. I'm going to call you Tim Mail. Tell us again what this competition is, and how does that segue from what Megan was talking about municipalities and states trying to communicate better. You're trying to solve that problem, right?
Right. So there's 50,000 water utilities in America that serve anywhere from 100 customers to 1 million. And since the late 1980s, early 1990s, those utilities every year are supposed to publish a report that says what contaminants are in the water. That's pre-tech, right? Almost pre-internet, that they started with those reports. Most utilities today still basically provide something that looks like the old printout that came out in the 1990s. And the average consumer, not even the average consumer, none of you or me understand what the data tables in those reports say. So it's completely useless to the vast majority of customers. And yet it would be so nice for customers to be able to understand, the test results that their utility is paying for. So the simple idea is, look, let's take the format of this report with all its sort of warts, with the data from the format of those reports, and let's ask anyone out there for up to a $6,000 prize to redesign what it looks like either on the web or through another, PDF, ideally a machine readable one. To show that information in a way that reaches more customers. We're particularly focused on African American, Latino customers, groups that have particularly low trust of water, just to try to convey some information in a little bit easier way. And the idea is that once we get good ideas, we can turn those ideas back to utilities and to state regulators and say, look, it wasn't that hard. This set of college students in Kalamazoo came up with this beautiful redesign, or whatever the ideas are.
Yeah. So the communications vehicle really needs to have a revamp, and that's what you're doing. And then Megan, your customers, your municipalities, they could certainly leverage that breakthrough to better communicate with their customers. Johnny, I want to come to you next. So there's all these environmental testing labs out there. Every state's got dozens of labs. Aren't the labs here to help us understand what's in their water? What problem are you solving at Simple Lab?
Great question. The environmental labs, many of them got their start in the 70s and the 80s. They developed their own business models and systems, mostly on compliance-driven testing, working with governments, working with consulting engineers, working with big business. Certainly not ready for the kind of consumer revolution that has hit almost every industry, the direct-to-consumer model. So the labs themselves are not built with the right architecture to serve people at home very well. In fact, they're generally built towards serving big clients, and they serve them brilliantly. You know, billions of dollars of intellectual capital and real capital and financial capital have gone into designing instrumentation that can detect contaminants at levels, you know, in the parts per trillion, like with PFAS. The ability to answer important water quality questions is there sitting in the labs, but people don't have access to it in the same way they have access to other products online on Amazon. And so what we have done principally is onboard laboratories, understand their menu of tests that they can perform, the MDLs, the things that they're capable of testing, and then through a system of optimizations, communicate those capabilities to anybody who wants to test anything, and say that all of these labs out there perform amazing services that can answer important questions to you, your family, your health, your community, your company, but you need better access to it because you're not a government, you're not a consulting engineer. As like Dol said, you're not likely even a chemist or an environmental engineer. So how do you communicate what labs can do in a way that will entice people and encourage people to use labs to solve their problems, to begin with the information that labs can provide them before, you know, buying bottled water or buying the wrong filter or losing trust in your government? Like, establish trust, use the labs that we have in our economy, but we need to figure out a way to communicate their capabilities more effectively to average Joe and Jane.
So just to translate that a little bit, the labs have always been around and they've always been important and they do good work, but they haven't really been relevant to my water quality needs in my home here. There's no way for me to communicate with them until your company came along and you're sort of making labs relevant to all of us, bringing them.
Correct. We want them to work as a network. Like, laboratories should work as a network. They're on the same team in many regards, at least from the perspective of democratization and citizens out here. We want lab data and lab testing to be more available, right? And if they're all living in their own little silos in the dark with respect to consumers, that's not going to happen. So you know, my main contribution, Simple Lab's main contribution here, is bringing the labs forward, lowering the costs of lab testing by increasing those utilization rates of these instruments, and communicating the results more effectively.
So just to summarize a little bit for everybody out there going forward. So Megan, you're helping municipalities and states deliver on their promise to deliver clean and safe water for their citizens. And I know that's very, probably too short or oversimplifying what you do. Tim Mail, it seems like your organization, amongst other things, I know you do more than just this, you're reimagining the reporting between utilities and consumers, making it easier for everybody to understand what's going on. I know that's an oversimplification. Johnny, it sounds like your business is bringing a big player to the table that needs to be at the table, that wants to be at the table, but maybe not able to be at the table, but the labs are now relevant to this conversation in a way they weren't a few years ago. Dal, in lay terms, what is your business doing for people out there who just, in a nutshell, what does Aquagenuity do?
Yeah, Aquagenuity is pushing the envelope even further. We can't do what we do without all the work that you just described from all of these types of players in the different sectors of the industry. But in reality, we found that consumers, they just want to know that their water's fine. They actually don't want to think about it. I really don't want to like do anything. I just want to know it's fine. And so how do you do that? We've built a software, machine learning software, that actually can monitor, starting with lead. I mean, anything could be in water, right? But starting with lead could use, you know, a lot of geospecific data and monitor lead levels and report them in real time without you having to necessarily install a sensor or manually test, right? Which obviously requires a lot of data points, got to have a lot of hyperlocal tests and data coming in. And so it's super early stage, but our vision, as I said, the future of water is that consumers can have these notifications on apps they already use every day. So Zillow, I'm searching for a new home. I search traffic, crime, schools, walkability. Now I can search by water quality and get some sense of, you know, peace of mind. Hopefully our water's fine, but if it's not, you know, I'm able to get a notification. The Weather Channel, these are partners that we're talking to. You know, I'm looking at the local forecast and now I can see my local aqua score, right? So making this much more kind of in the face of the everyday consumer, because what that does is that, number one, like I said, gives peace of mind. If something is not right, you get an early notification instead of maybe going 3 years being exposed before they're required to do any sampling for lead, for example, right? But then it moves us into the citizen science. If you are able to see that information in a way that makes sense to you as a regular consumer, now you can start to, whether you advocate or start to take action for your own family, or you start to get involved at a community level. I think that's what really will drive people to take those actions as a citizen scientist, test their own water, start sending up reports and aggregating the voice of consumers so that we can kind of bridge that gap, you know, the last mile. Hopefully every city has perfect water, right? But it has to go the last mile to the tap. And in that last mile, that's where all these crazy things are happening, because the pipes, we just don't have any technology kind of monitoring there. So that's what we do, is bring it forward and hopefully, you know, bring it to the place where consumers already live every day.
Transformative. That's a breakthrough business that has to make it for all of our sake. That's got to make
Yes.
it, because we all need that. And I mean, we all use this remote control every day. Being able to access my water quality and then share that with friends and network creates a citizen science sort of movement. I like that.
Absolutely.
And Tim, tell us about the work at Gloss, about who do you exist for as a nonprofit? What's the mission?
Yeah, great. Well, and you know what, just listening to the other people on the call today, it's great because I really feel like there's an opportunity here in the Great Lakes region in particular, where Gloss really fits right in the middle of all of this. We're kind of in that sweet spot where we serve everyone and hopefully benefit everyone as well. I was talking with a colleague the other day. She's probably going to laugh. I kind of described Gloss as being kind of like the Switzerland of data, where just like the Swiss banking industry, you know, we take in all kinds of money. Well, we don't. We take in data, right? And then we turn around and we store it and we host it and we manage it appropriately. And then we turn around and we give it to other people. We make it available for other people. And I wish it was money, but it's data and it's almost as valuable, if not more valuable than money. And so we've got a wide network of people that we work with, researchers, federal, non-federal, provincial agencies and organizations, even private companies in many cases. And that's certainly one of the directions that we're going, where we ingest that data. We store, if not the data, at least the metadata, we have it available to others. And then we have hundreds of thousands of users around the Great Lakes that love Gloss because we provide information in a super easy format for them to understand. They want to know what the wave height is at this particular location on Lake Michigan. Boom, they come to Gloss, they find out, they go back and they go boating or whatever it is they're going to do. It's the same with water quality data. People are already familiar with Gloss and the technology that we have. If they want to know whether a beach is safe to swim at or whether the water is safe to drink in this area, they should just be able to access that super easy on either smartphone or mobile or web apps or whatever means, or like Dahl was saying, through notifications into other platforms that they already use in their day-to-day. And I think that's where we've just recently embarked on a program. We launched something called the Smart Great Lakes Initiative in 2019 as part of our 5-year strategic plan. And Smart Great Lakes is aiming to bring together citizen scientists, policymakers, government agencies, research institutes, and academia all together in an ecosystem, an information ecosystem, so that people are aware of what's happening around the Great Lakes. And that's fine from an abstract level, but from a practical level, we also recognized we needed to build a technology platform to support all that. So that's what we're doing right now. And John's aware of what we're doing. We've been talking with him about it. And that platform is really, and I'm being deliberate when I say platform, because it's meant as a series of ins and outs for data and information. So yeah, we'll have a front end app that people can consume, but if other organizations want to build a front end to tap into the Gloss platform, absolutely, it's all wired and dialed for that. But if people want to contribute data to Gloss, then it's also super easy to do that as well through our APIs.
So that's the topic of the next 30 minutes, is if people want to contribute. So I'm going to get to that in a second. Tim.
Yeah.
And you're a receiver of, if people want to play a part in all this, your organization can receive that data and do something with it. Am I understanding that correctly?
100%.
Okay, got it.
Whether it's from Megan's company or Citizen Science who bought a water quality kit off Amazon, they should be able to get that content into Gloss super easy. And that's not to detract from other private companies that have their own hosting systems for data. It's just another source of super easy to access information.
The entrepreneurship going on and the energy going on right now is solid. I'm so excited about each one of your different things. Megan helping utilities and states deliver on their mission. Tim Mayo getting that messaging into the 21st century. Johnny making the labs relevant. Dal, Main Street, people walking around with their cell phones need to know what's going on. And Tim, you've got this organization that allows the ingestion of data, and then you translate that data into useful knowledge that people can make decisions on. So everyone's solving different problems of the problem here, or the different part of the problem here. So we're about a half an hour into this discussion. And so there's just sort of introductory things, allowing everyone on the call to know who's who. And for anybody out there who's listening, you can see why we wanted to invite these 5 individuals, because each of them has sort of some sort of ability to bring us all forward. I mean, on our own, I don't know where we would be without the 5 of you pulling the rest of us along. And so just hats off to the entrepreneurial vision of each of you. So now that we're sort of halfway through this, I want to switch over into 2 more topics over the next half an hour. One is data itself, the production, the generation of data. This water quality is good, that water quality is bad. That's data. And then how that data can get to someone who knows what to do with it. And then I want to close the rest of this discussion with how everyone on this call can participate in this process in their own way. Johnny, I wanted to come back to you and just kind of frame this a little bit for everyone in the audience here. So isn't water quality data really well organized by the government? Loaded question.
No. So you have sources of data in every state. You have federal sources of data, municipal sources of data, different entities providing data through different templates. Part of the reason we are in this moment of time right now, where like it's 2020 and everyone's still wondering where the water quality data is because of how poorly organized it has been for such a long time. And I won't belabor the point. I think everyone would agree. Ultimately, I think that environmental issues have really peaked. The awareness of those issues has peaked. And so individuals are more than ever aware that environmental risks, like environmental health risks, are important and something to monitor and something to do something about. And these same environmental risks are increasing the costs of water quality. And increasingly, those water costs aren't just falling on utilities and on businesses and on nonprofits and cities. Those costs are falling on individuals. It's hitting the pocketbook. Mm-hmm. As it hits the pocketbook, this water quality data becomes very, very relevant, because now you need affordable solutions for people who may not have the money to spend on testing, or for governments or regulators or for businesses who need to do a lot of analysis before they do their R&D, before they do their policy making. Because this has become a pocketbook issue for most people, it is finally a moment where I think democratization is absolutely necessary. In other words, you have providers like Simple Lab lowering testing costs, and 120, streamlining a process that needed streamlining 20 years ago, and everyone else on the call providing services that are really like low-hanging fruit in a sense. It's like these things needed to be improved years ago. They're getting improved now because, and this is the inflection point, people's realization and awareness of environmental health risks are becoming personal problems for them. Mm. And the water quality data needs to catch up dramatically, because if you're a person, you can use, we have a tool, water quality search, on our website. There's very many ways you can go look for water quality data. Good luck feeling confident that you have figured out your water quality data, right? So How do you buy a water filter? It's confusing. It's expensive.
Mhm.
How do you trust your utility, your government, when there's just no transparency? It's confusing. Now, at a certain point, it reaches a critical mass, and I think we've reached that, where people say, we want something. And I think we're there now. So the sources of data, have historically been state and federal, and they will continue to be state and federal for a large portion of the data, but they must increasingly become consumer friendly and individual friendly. And I think that's why citizen science right now is the right language, because it's the biggest missing part. Anyway.
No, that's the excellent point. I wanted to switch down to Tim Mayle at the Environmental Policy Innovation Institute. So EPIC is informing policy. And when it comes to water quality, what data have you traditionally used? And what are the needs going forward for EPIC to inform innovative policy?
Yeah, thanks for that question, John. I guess what you want is consumers and regulators to be able to compare where water was last year and 5 years before, where it is today, and where it'll be in a couple years. So that's a macro perspective, the scale of a state or EPA at the federal level. We just don't have data aggregated, and many of you are putting together that aggregation in various forms right now, but it doesn't exist in government to be able to look at those kinds of trends and trajectories. That's, I think, the most crucial data when it comes to the policy work that we do, to figure out, are things getting better or are they getting worse? And I think in general they're getting better, but I think people feel like they're getting worse, which is a bit of an irony. It would be like if we were trying to predict the weather with just 50,000 data points in cities across America collected once a year. The weather wouldn't be very useful, right? But it's entirely conceivable. It's very possible to put together all the data that exists into an aggregated system that shows, that it's feeding off of daily samples taken through test kits that any of you folks are selling, or hundreds of other parties are selling and collecting data. We're not there yet, but we could be. Like, the steps to get there, from my perspective in a policy context, are just so easy. And you just, from a policy perspective, just like, are we on the right track or are we on the wrong track? And if we're on the wrong track, how do we fix it? That's the kind of data that's really useful to bring this into a policy context.
And your competition, Tim, is when is it going to be announced, the winner, and then the new report? And is there your website?
Yeah, we'll announce it in January. The announcements that we'll put out the prizes in January.
What can we expect to see? The winning report will be aesthetically easy to read and has all the right information. What can we expect for that report?
We have no idea, right? Because it's one of the best ideas out there. We're sort of hoping that we get a web-based, interactive version of a tool. We're also hoping we get just some really great artists, showing information visually. I like the idea of like at factories, you'd see how many days since an accident, right? Like, for a utility, how many days since we had a violation? How many days, to your work, how many days since lead level was above this? For lots of utilities, it's like 50 years, 20 years, right? There's all sorts of ways to present the information that consumers would capture. But that's what we're hoping to see in the entries we get. And in theory, EPA was supposed to have issued new regulations on these consumer confidence reports by this year. They'll be behind their deadline set by Congress in a month. And so we're hoping that in the next administration, they might take some actions to try to direct those reports to be, more accessible, and we'll have some sort of best examples of what that looks like.
Thanks, Tim. Megan, I want to come back to you quickly. So your clients, let's say, for example, Denver, Colorado, they embraced 120 water and they see the value in what you're doing. How would you introduce citizen science to them? How could citizens in Denver get more involved in the process between 120 and the city? What are your thoughts on that? Or any city, for example?
Yeah, because I was going to say, you started with, I think, an example of good, honestly. Because I think just acknowledging that my citizens are customers and I need information from them is honestly the first step. And I would probably say 90% of water systems aren't there at all. their customers are ratepayers. I mean, they are there to consume water and pay their bills so that they can fund budgets and, OpEx and whatnot for the utility. So, I mean, I think, a couple of things, it's again, I think it starts as knowing the value of a customer. What is the value of a customer for you? And I firmly believe, and I've said this, is if we want our customers to pay more for water, we have to show them how much more valuable we are as a sector and as an industry. So what I think, Denver does well and how they would interact with 120 is a lot more public transparency. Again, if you look at the Pittsburghs, the Denvers, they are now having whole microsites around, hey, here are where my lead pipes are. Here's our program to get them out of the ground. Here's how my schools are testing. Like, they are being more proactive about that information, and and therefore kind of engaging the community to also help them. Like, if they know that they have a lead service line, hey, report it, right? We want the feedback just as much as we're going to plan to go dig up and validate that. So, long-winded answer to say, I think it has to be a bi-directional, top-down, like literally business model shift, that we are going to be customer-centric, right? We are going to understand that we need to communicate with our customer differently. And I'm actually going to invest some dollars on the PR and the proactive communications that like Denver does around our kits. Like, hey, expect this really pretty blue kit on your doorstep, and here's why you're receiving that, and here's why it's important that you get it back, and here's how we'll communicate with you within 24 hours. So it's all about valuing the customer, communicate often, right? So just high level traits that I've seen for the successful examples of good.
Yeah, that's helpful. That insight is helpful. Dal, what about in Aquagenuity? What are some creative citizen science strategies that you have? Working with schools, working with NGOs. What is it? What are some of the strategies that you're working on?
Yeah, one of the things that we did, we were very intentional about positioning our brand as a tool, right? Whether it's for corporations or cities or whatever the case may be, and kind of removing the politics out of water, which is difficult to do, right? But I always say water is not a political issue, it's a human issue, right? When you focus on the fact that lifespans are being shortened by as much as 15 years, especially in Black and brown communities, low income communities, due to water pollution and air pollution as well. That's crazy. And humans should just not be the sensors that are alerting us to water quality problems, right? So when you remove, we're not pointing blame, we're not saying you guys are at fault and this person did that. You're just looking at data. It's data, right? It's numbers. And okay, this number is low, we want to raise it. How do we increase it in this area? How do we improve, the water or the water quality in a certain area of the city? And data allows you to do that, right? It takes all the politicization out of it. And so we're really focused on just providing simple tools, letting cities know, letting consumers know, this is just a platform everybody can be involved. And so one of the initiatives that we've designed is called Guardians of H2O. And you mentioned we started in the schools because schools, they want STEM-based education tools, they want project-based learning, they want real-world application of what kids are learning in the classroom. And so we found that school districts across the country are super excited, like, hey, let's get in here and test our water, little test strips that we have, and they work with our web app, and kids are learning data science and math and all of this fun stuff. But also, that gets them involved and gets them thinking about being a part of the solution. United Nations, obviously, they have all the SDG goals, obviously clean water is number 6, but target 6B specifically talks about how do you engage communities to become kind of these stewards and being actively involved in monitoring water quality, wastewater and such in their local community. I really feel like as a 21st century citizen, we all have our little smart devices, as you were talking about. And also we should all be monitoring our own environment in real time. If we've learned nothing else from the pandemic, we've learned that you can't necessarily trust the government to give you kind of real-time information about environmental threats to your health, right? So being able to move that forward and to start to give people really simple tools and ways to get involved and be stewards of their own health and their own environment, that's really what we're about.
I like that vision. Thanks, Dal. Tim, I'm going to get to you in a second, but I have a question that was actually relevant to Dal's. Somebody asked a question in the chat room about the difference between, well, not the difference, but the use of citizen science versus community science. Anybody have an opinion about the difference between those two, or what your organization plans to use going forward? Citizen science or community science? Everyone had an
Yeah,
opinion?
I'll start chime in quickly to say, I think what we're doing right here is an example of community science, right? Different organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, governmental, and other entities coming together, all these data sets, right? Don't have them siloed. How do we bring that all together in a way that's beneficial to everyone? To me, that's what community science looks like. And then citizen science is that next layer where individuals, again, you don't have to be a 20-year veteran of the water industry or an environmental engineer or something. Like, you just as an individual can go out, the same way we have weather stations all over the place. We talked about the weather example earlier. We have data from everywhere. That's how our weather forecasts are so accurate, from the commercial planes and buoys in the ocean and weather stations all over. We can do the same thing for water quality. And if we empower regular citizens to feel like they can participate in that, I think that's what citizen science looks like.
Tim, question for you. You're different than everyone else here because they're mostly focused on drinking water coming out of taps. It's regulated. But your Great Lakes observation system, you're focused on surface water quality. Elaborate a little bit about how your world is different than tap water and drinking water.
Well, it all ends up in the taps, right? So we have a vested interest in making sure that we're measuring the quality of water in the Great Lakes accurately, so that we can better inform the water treatment utilities and allow them to make reactive decisions or predictive decisions that will impact the water quality of their customers. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm all for, especially being able to correlate things that are happening in the lakes versus what's coming out of people's taps. There would be nothing that would make me happier than seeing a map on the GLOS website that shows, hundreds of thousands of results of readings that individuals have taken in their homes, and then being able to say, all right, this person found some arsenic or something in their water, or lead, but their water source was 8 miles away in Lake Huron, where there was no such contaminants found. So obviously it helps the utilities and the governments better understand where the problems are being introduced into the water supply. Right. If we have more and accurate and trusted results of data that's coming in from the lakes themselves. And I think trust is a huge problem here. I think, as Johnny was saying, and I think someone else was saying, or Megan was saying, people don't trust the government, and for lots of reasons, right? Lack of transparency in many cases. Like, the data may be there, but it's in complicated spreadsheets or in formats that makes it very difficult to read and understand. I think a lot of this is a lot of the water quality data is collected by disparate groups, and so they don't share. And so it means that whoever's collating this stuff doesn't have all the information at their fingertips. And I just think there's a real opportunity here. You get it into a medium, you put it in the hands of people to collect it themselves, you put it in a medium where they can access it and share it, and it's fairly neutral, like I said earlier, and agnostic, and makes them develop that trust. They can see what their neighbors are doing as far as what kind of water quality they have. And there's actually a positive spin on this. It's not just looking for lead and arsenic. Imagine all those cases where the water's totally safe to drink. It's absolutely fine. And so people then don't need to go buy bottled water. I mean, number one reason people buy bottled water is because marketing has been very effective in convincing people that the water's not safe to drink, right? And so you can turn that around and then impact the environment by having less pollution, and ultimately affect climate change, and certainly make the environment better in the region by getting people off of bottled water and restoring confidence in their tap water, where appropriate, obviously. But the only way that's going to happen is if they have information.
Amen. Johnny, I have a question for you about heat maps. And for people out there in the audience who don't know what a heat map is, basically taking a bunch of data, laying it on a city, and seeing which neighborhoods light up as different colors, a darker color or lighter color, depending on what you're looking for. So a heat map. I know some people out there maybe not in the sciences. How close are we, Johnny, to a heat map of a city's water quality by block, neighborhood, region? I mean, heat maps seem like we could heat map an entire city and look at water quality, couldn't we? Or is it close? Or
Tough question. I think you could do it poorly already. The question is one of resolution, data quality, as folks have brought up so far already. There is nothing as good, though, as your own water quality, right? Because you don't know which plumbers worked on your home 40 years ago, or what exactly is happening in the plumbing at your house in general. And so people really want their own answer. They want it personalized. The heat mapping thing, I think, is only getting better. When it happens, I don't know exactly. It's coming. Like we have not a heat map, but we have a map of water quality on our own website. It's definitely in the cards. If you look at air quality, I think you have one of the best examples in the environmental industry of producing consumer-friendly information about an environmental risk. And here in California, that really hit home. Every day, people were checking the heat maps for air quality index. That's where we want to get to. But to get there, to reiterate some of the important points here, it's like you need the combination of all these things. You've got the violation data going to the federal government. You have states with their own data that's kind of difficult to access. And then you have individual level data. And then you have sensors and people with instruments out there in the street, professionals working for the utility and otherwise collecting data. It's different data sources need to come together and talk. And we need platforms that will facilitate that connection. And then we can talk about heat mapping effectively. So you could go and do it today. We do it for fun. But like, is it accurate? No, not yet. It's just the type of data that is available right now is still on the cusp of being integrated together to be able to tell that story in a responsible way. I think it'll happen in the next 2 years. Like I'm confident somebody will produce a reliable heat map. You know, we're working day and night to figure it out, and I know others are as well. And once that day comes, I think we'll have the ability to constantly improve that heat map if the lab network is available for people to kind of stress test it. But yeah, I think heat map is super important. That's what people respond to. And Doll is absolutely right when she says it's like it needs to be consumer friendly. Like this needs to be something that you look at and you're like, oh, green means go, good, right? You can't be talking about MDLs and MRLs and methods, and you know you'll lose everybody. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done still.
So Johnny, your point was getting back to Tim Kern's work at Gloss. And somebody asked in the chat room what Gloss's email or website is. Tim, what is the website for Gloss?
Yeah, it's just gloss.org or smartgreatlakes.org.
One S, GLOS.org, right? GLOS.org.
Yes, GLOS.
So, Dal, I have a question for you, coming back to you. And then I want to ask Megan the same question. So you just do a quick Google search on water quality in your town, and you're going to get some bad news.
Yeah.
So an average person, they see this bad news, what can they do about it? Just a layperson out there in the audience, like, I see this bad news in my town. Is there anything I can do besides buy a filtration system for my home? What could somebody do on the testing side?
Yeah, I think that's why this type of discussion is so important. I mean, obviously, if you need a filter, if you see something crazy going on near where you live, or more importantly, as Johnny was saying, you need to actually test the water at your tap, right? Because you don't know what kind of pipes you have and all the things that are affecting what's coming out of the tap, the water that you drink and cook with and bathe your kids with in your house, right? And that's one of the reasons why Zillow is trying to make it a standard part of the home purchasing process, right? People need to make water appraisal, right? Just getting that personalized information is kind of really critical. And then, pulling that data back to inform the community, which I think is the other important aspect. It's like not just one house, but if this is happening in my house, that's one thing, but if 50 people in my neighborhood are seeing similar things, now we have a larger kind of conversation, a larger set of data that can hopefully kind of be pushed up to local officials or drive some type of action at a more community or local level. And that's really what you want to see, especially in underserved communities, because, too often, you go years, people are being exposed to things, crazy health impacts happen. And then it's like, oh, well, let's do some research for some more years. And then it's like, oh, it was the water. We want to create a world where we're using technology to figure that out and not humans as the sensors for that. So I think just knowing that information early, being able to take action either for yourself personally or as a community is really important.
Okay. Megan?
Yeah. I would also say, I mean, the incentive structures just around our regulated bodies and water systems have to improve in some way. Because if you think about it, under the current lead and copper rule, a city like the city of Chicago is only required to take 50 samples every 3 years. So back to your heat map, Johnny, I mean, unless you have a utility that's not going to get dinged for doing their own consumer request programs and offering that for free, and I do believe it does need to be either free of charge or there needs to be low cost laboratory data available or censoring, like, you know, I just go back to, when are we going to get to a heat map? Well, it's when we feel like we can make testing at the tap accessible and not in a way that is dinged by regulators. Again, these the incentive structures, the more you test, they're not really incented to test more, right? They're incented to make sure that they're in compliance. And sometimes those two things are at odds, even if there's a water quality view that needs to be examined through data. So anyway, I think it's that point is, what to do. I think it's encouraging your utility to say, I'm not going to ding you. I'm not going to blast you on social media by requesting a test. I just want to know so I can make my own informed decisions. I think it's, the utilities being very clear about what they can do and what they can't do. I can maybe show you that you have lead in your plumbing, but I can't physically, fix it for you. I may be able to put you on a payment program or whatnot. But, I think it just all goes back to, and thank you, John, and for putting this conversation together. Let's just talk about it as a community and talk about holistically what needs to improve, because I think that's the first step. It's what all needs to improve here and how and who does that need to be communicated to. So we're asking the right questions and putting the right platform together within this community.
Amen to that. There's 7 minutes left. So I want to be mindful of time, and if everyone can keep their answers kind of short or just concise. Johnny, what, from your experience, what contaminants of concern continue to rise to the top of customers? What are they concerned? Lead, PFAS, arsenic? And just to answer, what is,
good question. I mean, 2021, we plan to put out some really cool research on the data we've got so far. We've got 1 to 2 million in-home water test results now across the United States. And, for one thing, people are really good at identifying the aesthetic stuff, tastes, smells, colors. But if you know anything about water quality, you know that those aesthetics are not the end all be all of water quality health. Many things have no taste, have no color or smell. And that's maybe the biggest and most valuable opportunity to approach, is identifying these health risks that don't have visual or organoleptic properties you can notice at home. And so where we see the most concerning type of data is when we look at things that don't have those indicators. And for example, I did some research before the call, 38% of our customers have chloroform levels above the California public health goal nationwide. That's a huge number. It should become a very important question for the industry as a whole, what to do about chlorination and chloramines. There is so much confusion out there from everybody, from every stakeholder about how to handle that. I think the type of data we collect varies enormously by the type of customer. You have the people who are running basic tests for heavy metals, and you've got people who are testing, drugs and pharmaceuticals in their water. By and large, the good news is the situation isn't quite as bad as the people who think it's. I mean, Tim who said this earlier. There's people out there who think the water quality is terrible. It's usually not, and that's the good news. But between 1 and 20% of households have some major issue they should address.
Right. Okay.
And it's about identifying those issues more prominently and democratizing water quality data. The purpose of this call is all about helping narrow down those places where you do need to do more testing and figure out the problems and really articulate them clearly for everyone and build trust and find solutions. Right now, it's just total wild west. I feel like people just don't know. And they go and make bad decisions online.
Dig up a pipe here, dig up a pipe there, because we think that's where the lead is or something. Johnny, sorry to cut you off. We only have 4 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure everyone had a final word in. Tim Mail, I wanted to get back to you quickly about your competition and your report. So it's coming out in February. there's people around the country on this call. Could they go to their utility and suggest that they use the Epic format? Give some advice to people out there in the audience about how they could work with Epic, your group, and bring that to their own utility.
Yeah, I mean, the first is that there are utilities like the city of Sacramento that have done just a great job of redesigning their consumer confidence report.
Okay.
Second, from the results of this competition, which we'll put online in the beginning of 2021, anyone on this call or across the country could take any of those best ideas and send them to the utility and say, stop sending me this awful table and send me something that looks more like this. So yeah. It should be something that empowers consumers to try to make a difference in their,
Love it. Nobody knows what parts per billion really is anyway. It's tiny. Dal, Tim Kearns, come back to you. Any final parting words? We only have a few minutes left.
No, other than just, I guess I want to extend an invitation to all of you panelists with me and on the call today, and anyone who's listening. I see there's some great questions in the Q&A panel on the side. Like I said at the beginning, I see this as an opportunity for the Great Lakes region, for citizens, for organizations, for all of us to better establish and have confidence in the data that's collected, and ultimately that turns into information which helps people make smarter decisions. However that benefits them in their lives or their organizations, it's up to them. But that's what I feel our role is, and that's where I see this opportunity. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Dal, any final just quick words in 30 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely encourage everybody to figure out what's going on with your water where you live. You can do that on our site at myaquascore.com, but it's really about understanding water quality, how it impacts your health. It happened to my dad. We didn't know he got sick. We couldn't figure out why. It turned out it was his water quality. He actually passed away due to complications from that. So it can be a very serious thing. And then, 2 weeks later, I started this company back in 2017. So you want to make sure that you know what's happening in your water and protect your health. On the flip side, if your water is great, we want to make sure you know that as well, so you can stop polluting the oceans. We were named one of 7 technologies saving the world's waterways by Ocean Visions. We don't need any more plastic, so the more we can reduce bottled water, the better. So
thanks,
find out what's in your water. Absolutely.
Thanks, Dal. Megan, some quick parting words for everyone?
Yeah, no, I mean, see something, say something. You are a customer of your water utility. And if you don't think that you're getting the level of visibility that you need in either your consumer confidence report or how you're communicated with, tell them, right? Because that's really the only way that they're really going to change. So I would just say, don't feel like you have to remain silent. Express your opinion, because your voice can be heard.
Johnny, final words?
Everything everyone else said, plus if I could have one holiday wish, it would be machine readable water quality data from municipalities up.
Say that one more time, just so we all get it straight. Machine readable what? Machine
readable water quality data. So all of the data that's being collected by the utilities, it doesn't necessarily see the light of day.
Yep.
Would love to change that, but we need the data to be collected and distributed in a more machine readable format.
Cool. Well, in an hour, it's hard to solve all these problems. And I think if anything else, this has just created more questions that we had maybe at the beginning of the hour. But the intent here was to catalyze a conversation amongst very entrepreneurial individuals, 3 founders of companies and 2 nonprofits. This is not the last one of these discussions we're going to do. And so please keep in touch with anybody on this. You can see all their names there and on the invite, and you can reach out to my LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, reach anybody, you can reach out to me anytime. Thanks everyone for participating, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.